Hi there, thank you so much for clicking on the thumbnail and being interested in my work. In this video, part 2 of the portrait of Ayra, I continue with the skin tones by showing you how I do the arms, and then the details in the clothes and the final details of the overall portrait. So be sure to watch it right through till the end, because here and there I'll be slowing things down in real time so you can take a closer look. So let's dive in and take a look. This is where I left it at the end of part 1, so it's a case now of getting the clothes in and the arms. So I'm going to use these greys, selection of these greys, to complete this underdrawing, but starting off just with the basic sort of tones first, and then just see what I need to use as I go along. Starting with the white then, just using the Carbothello white, just to get some pigment down there. And it's quite chalky, these Carbothello pencils are, so it helps with the subsequent layers then, because with it being chalky, it just fills that gap up a bit in the tooth, and it makes it a lot easier when you start putting those richer colours on later. So I'm using 708 here, creating sort of a tonal effect, just as an underpainting stroke drawing. More pressure on the white where it's lighter, less where it's mid, and then what I do then is just glaze over them with the primary colours, red, blue and yellow, just to subtle it up. And it's yellow ochre, ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. I love the underdrawing stage because it gives you a chance to be quite loose, so I'm just going with the direction of the pattern as well in the t-shirt there, and then just going with the flow. Just let go, open the heart, let go of the mind, and just flow with it. Here's the skin tone colours I'll be using for the underdrawing. Just following the same procedure I did for the face, just putting the white down first, light pressure where it's mid-tone, more pressure where it's highlight, glazing over with the yellow ochre here. It's well worth getting all the elements in before you start putting the rich colours on. It just makes everything sort of straightforward then. I'm always working towards connecting to everything, so everything becomes one, because there's no separate bits of things. So if I put loads of detail in the arms and loads of details in the hair and little sections, it can you look a bit separate in places, so I always try and keep that sort of oneness, that feeling of energy throughout. If you're enjoying this video, why not subscribe? It's absolutely free, and then you're sure not to miss any of my future videos. Another reason for doing the underdrawing is correcting the outline and making sure the shapes are in the right place as well. It just makes life a lot easier then when you start putting the rich colours on. You haven't got to move anything around when you've got heavy colour down. Now for this patch here, I'm just using the cold red and warm red together, and I'm using dark green to desaturate and make a shadow of that red. And same in the skin tone here, using green and red will make a natural shadow. Here's a selection of Caran d'Ache pencils I'll be using for the rich colour stage on the skin. And these are the pencils I'll be using for glazing over, because they're chalkier, so it makes it easier to move them around because they're quite soft. So starting off with the shadow area then, so I'm using a combination of dark green, a cold green and a warm green, olive green, with red to desaturate the red to make a skin tone. And then I'm using these pre-mixed colours. This is a pink white, putting that in first, creating that texture, and then going over with this like a yellow ochre white type pencil. It's like a yellow ochre with a bit of red and white, so it's a pre-mix, so you can mix those yourself really easy enough if you haven't got those pencils, by using yellow ochre, white and a bit of warm red. Here's a little bit of real time so you can see the pace I work at, and you can see how I'm building it up. I'm putting very small circles and dashes, and just letting that happen by just focusing my awareness of the feeling of the portrait in the reference, and just letting my hands move to what sort of texture it needs to go. It's ever so strange how it works. It just happens. I don't try and draw every little mark the same. it's my interpretation. I just let my hands move to what I sense needs to be done. To create that sort of vibrancy and that sort of feeling of richness in the highlights here, I'm using the premix flesh tint 5% from the Caran d'Ache, then adding the Chinese white to the mix as well, just to get that sort of richness. Then to get that good glow is to add the lemon yellow. If anything you need to glow, they call it chroma. Just add that little touch of lemon yellow. You don't need a lot, just a little, and it just brings it right forward and it glows. Now before I can continue, I've done a little bit of the white sheet there and put the shadow in, just so I can get an idea of the value properly before I start adding that sort of correct shadow and everything in the skin tone. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all my patrons for their wonderful support every month. I can't thank you enough. If you're considering joining me on Patreon and would like the benefit of longer, slower and more in-depth videos, please check out the link in the description below. This portrait of Ayra will be on my Patreon in 3 parts, where you get the chance to actually hear what I feel moment by moment, because it's actually real-time audio, real-time video throughout. So be sure to check that out. Should be on my Patreon in October 2023. Just slowing it down to real time here so you can see how I'm creating the shadow here. Well, I'll put the red down. This is a warm red from the Pastel range. So some more circles again, all the time creating that texture. I'm using the finger just to rub it here and there. Now I'm creating a really deep shadow here, so I'm using the 719 from the Caran d'Ache range, which is a dark green, and then mixing in with the vermilion from the Caran d'Ache, which is a 060. So mixing that in together to create a natural shadow, because it's complementary. The red and the green together will create a natural sort of grey, either warm or cold grey, or shadow, however you want to call it. But that's what I use really, or the olive green if it needs to be warmer. So small circles, you can see how I'm doing it. I'm creating texture all the time as I'm working, and I'm just feeling my way through, just making sure that everything's balanced. So I'm opening my awareness as I'm doing this. And this is yellow ochre as well from the Caran d'Ache, really rich colour, and then just blending that in together. So the perfect colour for skin tone is yellow ochre, warm red, ultramarine blue, and like an olive green, this colour here. And you can't go far wrong with that combination really. If you want to know more about how I mix shadows for skin tone, here's a free class for you. It's in the link in the description below, so be sure to check out and get your free class. It's quite interesting. It's a colour wheel I've made up myself, and it makes it quite easy to understand how to mix shadows for skin tone. Now on to the rich colours of the clothes, using these colours here, greys, and then I'm going to glaze over the top with these primary colours. So first of all, what I'm doing is redrawing it, but putting richer, vibrant colour down. So this is the rich colour stage. So all I'm interested in at the moment is just blocking in more of an accurate value and more of an accurate chroma. So once I've got that done in grey, then what I'll do then is just glaze over then with these subtle primary colours to create the correct grey. So using grey to start with to draw it up, and then just glaze to correct the colour. This grey pencil from the Pastel is a similar colour to what I'm looking for. So what I say, if you've got a grey that is similar colour, whatever kit you've got, use it, and then you can subtle it up with the primers like I mentioned earlier. So that's what I've done here, is using this bluer grey and then the white together to create the correct sort of feel and value. So I'm just altering the tint of it by adding that sort of Pastel white, which is titanium white, which is really good to mix in with colours. If you're enjoying this video, why not give it a like and share it with your friends? It would mean so much to me, as this would help the channel to grow. Right, just sharing with you some real time now. So here I'm using dark blue, ultramarine, with the brown to create natural shadows rather than using black. Now I'm showing you here how I'm glazing over with using the brown and blue to create a darker greys, and also adding a little bit of red and yellow ochre just to subtle it all up. Here you can see me, I'm using the Faber-Castell white here because it's quite rich in vibrancy, and then creating texture. And then once I've got the texture in there, and then I'm glazing over it up with the yellow ochre, because this is reflected light from the skin. So you put in that skin tone in that fabric, which will create a natural sort of balance with the painting, and then adding a little bit of red, so it's warm skin tone that's reflected onto the actual clothes there. So it's something to be aware of, is reflected light and how it changes things, and if you be aware of it, you see it more as well. Just quickly going through this section here, I'm just using the rich colours from the Caran d'Ache range, along with mixing in a bit of brown from the Carbothello there, and just creating that texture, putting more pigment down to create that sort of vibrancy, and then adding that lemon yellow for the chroma, and just getting the texture in by just using the combination of those pencils. Now there's a pencil I like to use from the Carbothello range, and it's 110, it's called Grey White, and it's amazing to get the softness of things, especially in background colours, but it's ideal for this sort of thing, with it being a white fabric. Just creates that real subtlety to it, you know, creating them natural sort of subtle bluish shadows. So I'm just working that in really with the grey I've already put in, and then just using the azurite white on top of that because it's really vibrant, and sort of feeling my way, trying to get these sort of values right before I start to put the details in. I tend to use my fingers a lot to blend the pastels, but if you're not happy with using the finger, just use a cotton board, but just have a little light pressure with it. Slowing it down to real time now, just to show you I've put this little bit of a design within the fabric. It's like little petals with it. It's very hard to find a pencil that's exactly the same, so I'm using a combination of two pencils. This one here, which is a warm grey, but when it's mixed with a light bluish grey, it becomes the right colour. So I'm just laying out the design first, just taking my time. This is all real time, so you can see what pace I'm working at. And then going over with the blue grey now, which creates the similar colour what I'm looking for. And then what I do then to soften all the edges is to go over them with the 110 grey white, and that creates that softness. So you've still got the design underneath, but all you're doing is just sort of tinting it to the right sort of value. As this was the blue grey, I didn't really need the blue, so all I did then was put the red and a bit of lemon yellow in there to create a bit of a glow, and it created the right sort of shades. Detail stage, I'm using this bob stick. It's what I use for my oil painting. It's just something to lean on so I can see what's underneath rather than using glassine paper, which would cover it up. So I'm putting the white down first for these strands of hair using the Faber-Castell white, then going over with the lemon yellow, and then just subtling it up with the yellow ochre, a little bit of brown and burnt sienna. So a combination of all those colours really, just to create that sort of softness of this strands of hair going onto the flesh tone. I'm just looking at the portrait as a whole. I'm looking in the mirror a lot, take photographs with your mobile phone, see what needs to be done. Keep seeing it from a different angle and then just change it up. And it's just a case of getting the overall balance, and nothing should stand out really prominent. It's all about being one and creating that sort of energy that aura or the feeling of Ayra. So I try and work on the whole thing just to get that sort of balance. I'm just desaturating that burnt sienna in the hair as well, because it seemed a little bit too red, so I'm just going over with the olive green, and then to create the correct chroma I'm adding that lemon yellow in places. So it's just basically going around getting that feel right. It's surprising really, just a change of a highlight here, a little bit more shadow here, or it's just getting that overall feel right now, and it's worth spending your time just putting these subtleties in there, because you can feel, oh no, I'm not going to change it because it looks okay. Keep going till you have a gut feeling that that's enough. And that's how I do it. As soon as I can feel that, no, stop. Because there's a tendency to over-render it if you're not careful, so you have to be careful. It's very subtle when you get this feeling that enough's enough, that you know in your heart that it's time to sort of stop. Thank you so much for watching the video right till the end. Hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. It does help the channel a lot. Now this will be on my Patreon, like I mentioned, in 3 parts, so if you want to check that out when it's available. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So if you wanted to look at any more of my work, please check out this link here. Take care. Bye.